Morning, everybody, and welcome to today's hearing of the Licensing Subcommittee, Tuesday, the 28th of September 2021. I am the presiding person for the purposes of this meeting, and my first duty is to elect a chairman. So could I please have a nomination for chairman of the subcommittee from the councillors? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to nominate you, Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. And do I have a seconder, please?
Yes, I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Farr. So elected. We will continue. Okay, thank you. I'd ask our clerk, please, to do.
Okay. Please note that this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to by the chairman. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Please ensure that you unmute yourself and always turn on the video function before speaking. Mute your microphone when you are not talking. After each party has made their representation, the chairman will ask each person in turn if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand function at the top right of the screen. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. So we move on now to apologies. We have no apologies. We have a full house. And I thank the attendance of Councillor Johnson and Councillor Farr for today's meeting. So I'll ask in turn then if either of those members have any declarations of interest. Councillor Johnson?
No declarations, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Farr?
No, nothing to declare.
And for completeness, I neither have any declarations to declare. Thank you very much. So we move on now to item.
Sorry, Councillor Butt. Just to say, under apologies for absence, Councillor Williams did send his apologies, and Councillor Johnson is stepped up as first reserve. So just to make that clear for the records, thank you. Thank you
for the record, and apologies, great, accepted for Councillor Williams with regard to another commitment. And thank you very much, Councillor. Stepping in so quickly. Or was it Councillor Farr? Who am I thanking here?
Councillor Johnson.
Whoever it was, a huge thank you. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. To protocol for public speaking, which is item 4, there's a revised protocol which you'll have in your agenda with regard to COVID, and it's circulated with the agenda sheet. So we move on then to the substantive, which is item 5, London Market, 108 Old Christchurch Road, Bournemouth, BH1 1NU. Ergo, an application has been received for a variation of a premises licence for the premises known as London Market at the above address, and this matter is brought before the Licensing Subcommittee for determination. So I'll ask each participant to introduce themselves and state their role, and also with regard to councillors, if they'd like to state their ward. It's always interesting, especially when we have applications, as to whether this matter may be in their ward or not. So we'll start with myself, and my name is Councillor Jude Butt. I'm chairman of the Licensing Committee and chairman of the subcommittee for today's purposes. So Councillor Toby Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Member for Alderney and Bourne Valley Ward and member of the Licensing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. And Councillor Farr.
Good morning, subcommittee member and ward member of Kinston Ward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sarah Rogers.
Apology. But yes, Sarah Rogers, Senior Licensing Officer, BCP Council.
Thank you very much. I think we are going to have some tech issues today. It started right at the get-go, didn't it? Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. That's lovely. Mr. Wright, thank you. Mr. Stephen Wright, if you'd like to introduce yourself. You'd like to unmute yourself, Mr. Wright, and then you can introduce yourself. Mr. Wright, you'll need to unmute yourself.
I am. I think I'm unmuted.
Mr. Wright,
can you hear me?
Mr. Wright, have you joined the meeting with 2 different devices?
I can't hear. So if we're going to have that standing
I've joined by the link that was provided.
Screen. I don't know about everybody else. I can see you twice, as if you've joined the meeting twice, which is perhaps why we're getting feedback.
Who is on
that
twice?
better? In a minute.
On my screen, I've got Mr. Wright showing twice, as if he's joined the meeting twice from two
Can
different.
you hear me now?
Mr. Wright, it might be wrong if you come out, if you leave the meeting and then rejoin.
I'm getting a lot of feedback. Is that better?
Yes.
That's much better. Whatever you
Yes.
did, you solved it. You were obviously on twice. Mrs. Cutler, are you content?
Yes, I mean, Mr. Wright is still showing twice, but as long as there's no feedback, we can live with that.
Can't hold a meeting if we can't hear the applicants. Okay, Mr. Wright, your time to introduce yourself.
That's better. He's leaving once.
Hang on,
That
now-
should be.
Let's see what happens now. Now we've got him on here once. What's going on?
I can't see Mr. Wright at all. I can see Steve Guest, but I got no picture.
I'm not sure what's
I think that would be most useful. We'll just take a very short adjournment just to deal with these technical issues. Thank you. And welcome back to today's meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. Some technical issues there, which are grateful to our technician who's overcome them. Thank you, Richard. So then moving back to where we were, and we are welcoming our applicant, Mr. Wright, if you'd like to introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Stephen Wright. I'm the licensing consultant representing the applicant, Miss Popper, who should also be joining us. I did send her the link. I hope she's available.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. Wright. And do we have Miss Popper with us?
Yes, I'm in here. I'm not sure if
Hello.
you can see me because the connection is poor, but I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, Ana Maria Poppa. I'm the director of London Market, the shop that applied for the variation.
Thank you very much. You're very welcome this morning. Louise Busfield?
Yes, good morning, Chair. Louise Busfield, Licensing Officer with Dorset Police.
Thank you, Busfield. You're very welcome. And Mrs. Cole?
Good morning, it's Linda Cole. I'm the legal advisor to the committee today.
Thank you, Mrs. Cole. If you could turn your volume up a little, you're a bit faint this morning. That would be useful. Thank you. And Mrs. Cutler?
Good morning, Chair. I'm the clerk for today's licensing subcommittee, and I'd also just like to point out that Gareth Gosling from the police has also joined us this morning, so you will need to do introductions for him as well. Thank you.
Oh, that's unexpected, but a welcome visit. Good morning, Sergeant Gosling. If you would like to introduce yourself, please.
Good morning, Chair. Yeah, Gareth Gosling, Sergeant for the Drug and Alcohol Harm Reduction Team for Dorset Police.
You're very welcome this morning. Thank you for attending. We introduced our clerk, I hope, Mrs. Cutler. I hope you weren't left out. And also, in addition, as we've already experienced, we do have Democratic Services who are providing tech in the background, so we thank them for their support this morning. So before I run us through the procedure, may I check that all persons given notice for the intention to speak have been identified, and any person who wishes to withdraw their representation or wishes not to speak has been identified or speaks now. Okay, thank you. So if there are no comments, I'll take that as correct. So I'll now explain the proposed procedure and order of speaking for the hearing as follows today. The licensing officer will present her report. The applicants will make their application. Questions of the applicant will be put by all parties, and members of the committee will go first. Responsible authorities, which indeed this morning is our police, will make their representations. Questions of the responsible authorities will be then put, and members of the committee will go first. All parties will then be given the opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke last to go first. The hearing will then conclude, and the subcommittee will deliberate in private with our legal advisor and our clerk present. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within working days, within the day or last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations. The notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. So I'll now ask all parties to confirm agreement on proposed procedure or make their representations. Mrs. Rogers, are you content?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wright, are you content?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. And Ms. Popper, are you content?
Yes, thank you very much.
And Louise Busfield, are you content?
Yes, thank you very much.
And Sergeant Gosling, are you content?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
And last and no means least, Mrs. Cole, are you content?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, and finally, and very importantly, may I remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they have already given in writing, but to expand on their written representations. All questions must be asked through the chair, and there'll be no cross-examination of parties. So if we are all happy, I will now ask our licensing officer to present the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This application is for variation of the premises licence at London Market, which is a convenience store with an off-licence facility. The premises are currently licensed from 12 p.m. until 8 p.m. each day of the week for off sales of alcohol. Application is made to increase these hours to provide off sales 24 hours a day and to include late night refreshment onto the licence. Current condition 2.5 has been requested to be amended to remove reference to the lockable pull down screen, and condition 2.6 will be redundant should the application be granted, and has therefore also been requested to be removed if that should be the case. An amended plan has also been supplied to be approved to show some minor alterations to the layout of the premises. Dorset Police have made representation to the application on the grounds that to grant the application would undermine the prevention of crime and disorder and public safety licensing objectives. No representations were received from any of the other responsible authorities or any other person. Should this application be granted and the applicant fails to operate in accordance with the licence and conditions attached to it, they will be aware that any of the responsible authorities or any other person may request a review of the licence at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Rogers. So are there any questions on points of fact for Mrs Rogers' members? Councillor Johnson?
Not at this time, Chair. Thank you.
And Councillor Farr?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
I have none for you either, Mrs Rogers. Thank you very much. So now we'll ask our applicant, or the agent for the applicant, Mr Wright, please, if he would like to put forward his application. Thank you very much indeed. Mr Wright, when you're ready.
Thank you. May I say from the start that I haven't received any evidence from Dorset Police in support of their representation. So I don't know what they will produce in a moment, but I haven't had sight of that or been able to look at that in detail. And I did request that any additional evidence obviously has to be with all parties' agreement.
Well, let me put your mind at rest, Mr Wright. There no further information has been received by the committee members. I don't believe anything is held with our clerk. I'm absolutely certain she would have shared it with us. So I think we are where we are. We have the response, your response to Miss Busfield's initial letter, and I believe that's all the information that we have. So if you'd like to move on.
Thank you very much. Miss Popper has operated the premises known as London Market, 188 Old Christchurch Road for 4 years. And I stress without incident of any description, including violence or antisocial behaviour. In fact, Dorset Police admitted to me, and I quote, "We have no issues with the premises at all." So we were quite surprised when we received the representation. The recently and sadly ongoing pandemic has affected businesses with a significant reduction in footfall. I do have some statistics which I can share with the committee to show these figures, but needless to say, most businesses suffered with a shortage of clientele.
Mr. Wright,
the other impact is...
Mr. Wright, thank you. Just to cut in there to be helpful, if you're trying to prove that there's some fiscal loss, that is not a matter for this committee. So that's necessary to share it with us.
No, I'm not trying to prove that at all. I'm just trying to explain the reasons why we've decided, or Miss Popper has decided at this juncture, to increase the hours and to make the business more viable.
So it's of a fiscal nature, but thank you very much. Moving on.
And another issue, which is, again, not a consideration for the licensing committee, but another premises opened in the area with a 3 AM licence 7 days a week, which has obviously affected the business. So for these reasons and for a loss of business and to try and regenerate, the application was made. I attempt to check the licence conditions for other premises online, but I wasn't able to do so because I believe that the police will be requesting static security at the premises. And I believe the other premises, the new premises with a 3 AM licence, does not have such a condition, but I couldn't check that online. It appears that the conditions are no longer available for public viewing. So given the history of the premises over the last 4 years and the fact that I have received no evidence to the contrary, only praise from Dorset Police, the need to vary the current premises licence is necessary for the recovery of the business. And we seek your support in this recovery that we are proposing. The business may open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for non-licensable activities, which is reflected in the application with the request for 24/7 opening. The current license hours of opening are somewhat mixed, with 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock, which I will come on to in a moment. But as the licensing officer has said, we currently are permitted to sell alcohol until 2000 hours, until 8 o'clock. So section 1015 of section 182 guidance states shops, stores and supermarkets should normally be free to provide sales of alcohol for consumption off the premises at any times when the retail outlet is open for shopping, unless there are good reasons based on the licensing objectives for restricting those hours. And given the history of the premises, we suggest there is no reason to restrict those hours. Our submission that the premises operator does prevent crime and disorder and promote public safety at her premises. The application also includes home delivery of goods, to include alcohol, with conditions to ensure the sale is strictly controlled at the delivery point. And I'm sure members would have seen the conditions proposed. This aspect of the application does not appear to be subject to the representation as submitted or during any of the numerous conversations I've had with Dorset Police. The premises currently opens into the early hours, and there remains no evidence to even suggest that the premises do not promote the licensing objectives. In accordance with the Council's statement of licensing policy, I did attempt to mediate with Dorset Police, but their insistence on static security, we feel, creates the wrong impression with no history of problems. A strict Challenge 25 policy is in place. A refusal to register is maintained. When alcohol is refused, if the person appears too young or who is drunk. This is not to say the customers do not attempt to purchase alcohol underage or when drunk, or when they are informed that alcohol may only be served until 8 p.m. This demonstrates the current procedures are successful with management and staff promoting the licensing objectives. One excellent track record acknowledged by the police. So what I am saying is that they may only serve alcohol until 8 o'clock at night, but they are, people do attempt to purchase alcohol at all sorts of times at night and in the morning, early hours of the morning. So they deal with those sorts of customers and still have no incidents. And furthermore, their procedures under the Health and Safety at Work, etc. Act 1974 and current risk assessments are robust, with no incidents of violence towards staff or under the Licence Act to their customers. So the manager and staff, in fact, actually assist with problems immediately outside their premises when safe to do so. Recently, the manager harboured 2 males and locked the shop to protect them from the threat of violence. They also harboured a young female who was concerned for her safety. 2 incidents of note when considering the positive impact the applicant has on the area, and this will continue. The police will request static security at the premises, as I've mentioned, which we suggest is not required in these circumstances, as it is disproportionate and overly burdensome when considering each application on its own merit. The applicant has a proven track record over the last 4 years, with section 182 guidance at 1.7 suggesting that disproportionate and overly burdensome conditions should be avoided. No evidence is produced or available which I have witnessed or which this committee will see to the contrary. Section 182 guidance also states at 2.3, a deterrent can include CCTV inside and out, which the applicant already has, and supplies images to Dorset Police when detecting problems on the street, and freely gives this assistance. It also suggests a radio. As members will see, we have offered to be a member of Pub Watch, Town Watch, and to also have a radio link to improve safety and links with other businesses in the area. The guidance and owner is competent and appropriately trained. Ms. Popper has the licensing qualification for personal license holders, and I am instructed to transfer Ms. Popper onto the premises license as the DPS, following where we are now. The premises complies with all safety measures raised in section 2.8 of the guidance. And section 182 at 9.3 states the licensing authority's decision should be evidence-based, justified as being appropriate and proportionate. We have yet to hear from Dorset Police, and I don't know what they're going to produce, but I submit there is no evidence against my client, so to request static security, in our opinion, is not justified, or appropriate or proportionate. The area is not always busy. I have seen the video that the police may produce, which was chosen the day lockdown was eased, and there were a lot of revellers in the town. But there didn't appear to me to be any violence or disruption, just people in high spirits after being locked down for months. The offer to provide a risk-based assessment, we feel, is proportionate, and we consider appropriate in the circumstances. Ms. Popper will deploy SIA staff when appropriate to do so. The guidance continues, as with the consideration of licence variations, the licensing authority should consider wider issues, such as other conditions already in place. So, as I say, we have CCTV to mitigate potential negative impact on the licensing objectives. And importantly, in this case, they also refer in the guidance to the track record of the business, which is undisputed and is excellent. Furthermore, the licensing authority is expected to come to its determination based on an assessment of the evidence, which obviously we've yet to see, and me as well. So the area is not always busy. Ms. Popper would like the ability to carry out a risk assessment. Over the 4 years, she has a good idea of what is happening. She has an excellent procedure in place for identifying when the football is on or when there are large events in the town, and will know, obviously in consultation with the rest of the licensees, when the town is going to be busy, and she will then deploy the appropriate SIA staff. At 944 of the guidance, it continues, and it emphasises the track record. And I know in your statement of licensing policy, you say that track record is not a consideration. I would suggest that the guidance at 944 suggests that a track record is a consideration when we're looking at a variation. So we consider the hours of operation, and particularly the hours for licensable activities, in particular the sale of alcohol, but also requests for late night refreshment. The provision of food is shown to assist people who are drunk.
Sorry, what did you say? Mr. Wright, did you say whilst they were drunk?
The provision of food is shown to assist somebody who is drunk.
I see. Okay, thank you.
The consumption of food can absorb the alcohol in the person's stomach. That's what I'm saying. We also request the provision of late night refreshment to encourage individuals to consume food over the counter. We've also suggested that food must be purchased at the same time that alcohol is purchased. However, I must stress that if the person is drunk, they will not receive the alcohol, but may still purchase the food. And they will be encouraged to do so. So the past 18 months and the current climate has driven the need to revise this offering and to add late night refreshment, to add hot food, to increase the sales of alcohol. There's no defending that. Alcohol is widely sought, and be able to home deliver the alcohol with groceries would be also requested. The premises licence holder will carry out a risk assessment in relation to the engagement of SIA licensed staff. We have offered that as a condition for consideration by the licensing committee. We've also added strict conditions for the sale of alcohol for consumption at home, for home delivery, which we would also ask you to consider. And where no ID is supplied, where it's not the card holder, then the alcohol will be returned. The shopping will be delivered, but the alcohol will be returned to the premises. And we have considered the pool of model conditions set out in your statement of licensing policy. I apologise for my dog. I am at home. Statement of licensing policy, compliance with the refusals. Sorry. We've considered the pool of model conditions in your statement of licensing policy. We do have a refusals book. We do have an incident book. Conditions currently exist about the ABV of alcohol at the premises.
Mr. Wright, could I ask you not to repeat what we already know? We're aware of all this because you've advised us this. It's in the application.
Okay.
So
and the Challenge 25 policy.
New points, thank you.
Okay. Just a couple more points. The licensing authority will not seek, in guidance 182 at 10.12, the licensing authority will not seek to restrict the activities of licensed premises where it is not appropriate. The premises is a supermarket, and to restrict the open hours, we consider will affect the sales of food and goods. And every decision on its merits and consider relevant representations. We consider the representation from Dorset Police is referring to the town, to the street, to issues in the public arena, and not specifically related, given that there is no cumulative impact policy, to the premises in question, which has this excellent record. May I introduce or ask if the committee would listen to Ms. Popper with a few comments that she has. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Ms. Popper, if you have some comments, we'd be happy to hear them, but if they are a repetition of what Mr. Wright has already said, then we would ask that you set those down. But if you have any new points, we'd be very happy to hear from you, Ms. Popper. Thank you.
Thank you for the meeting today. Yeah, probably a few more things to highlight. As the police side of the meeting knows, we are there for more than 3 years. We always try to help as much as we can in the safety of the area. Now, about the reason of the application, the footfall of the area went down quite a lot. We have 2020 was less than half comparing with 2019. 2021 is less than 2019 still. And I don't talk now financial side because that's not something that you are interested in, but I talk about the footfall. The footfall meaning number of customers that come in the shop, number of customers that actually walk in there. So that means a lower risk of incidents comparing with 2019 as well. we have procedures in place in the shop. We have procedures how to deal with a drunk customer. We have procedure how to deal with an underage customer. We have procedure how to deal with providing as much as we can or diminishing as much as we can sales to proxy. Yesterday we had 2 cases like that and we stopped it from happening. From our end, we do 100% of what we can to provide safety for the people working in the shop as much as for the people coming to buy from the shop or being in the area to have fun. Were during the more than 3 years that we are here, were many cases that would have ended up in violence if we wouldn't learn how to deal with a drunk customer. So we know how to deal with a drunk customer. We know how to refuse to sell to a drunk customer. About the late night refreshment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The committee, I'm absolutely certain, would in no way critique the fact that the licensing objectives have been complied with to the letter. We certainly don't have a critique, and the present license you have, they have been complied with to the letter. So it's not as if you need to sit there and prove that. We understand that, but we're moving to a change to extend the hours. So you keep reiterating that. We don't doubt that. So I wondered if you could move on to a new point, please. Thank you.
Okay. Now, related with related with the plans that we have for the future to make sure, because one of the points made by the police is related with the safety of the area and somehow being against the effort of the authority to keep it safe and disperse the danger as soon as possible. I'm not for having stand-in security, but because I want to make sure that we are safe in there and the customers are safe, I already booked classes for 2 people, me and 1 more person, to be trained how to deal with those cases and to get a certification as door supervisor, you call it, in order for us to make sure everything is safe. On my end, I understand your point of view. I understand why the police wouldn't want long hours and why they would be concerned about the safety or about the fact that the area might become busier, but that's not the case in there. We don't want to make it harder for everybody. We want to make it easier. We want to make it easier for us to run smoothly a business, but in the same time, we want to make it easier for the authority to deal with the situation in the area. That's why I already booked those classes on 5th of October, and the other one, the second person is going to be on 25th of October. On my end, whatever suggestion I'm getting from the authority, I'm more than willing to do improvements in there. I know that if it would be possible, I wouldn't apply for a license that increased the hours in the way that we applied, but I know we can manage it. I know that we're not going to bring any damage to the area when it comes about safety. I know that we're going to do our best to make it better. And I know that in the case of if in any moment I would believe that it's going to affect the security and the safety of the area, I wouldn't sell that alcohol at that time, even if it would have been in the license, if I would be allowed in the license to sell it. Because it's not just about having the business, creating a turnover from the alcohol, is as well for the safety. I live in the area. I live in the same building where the shop is. So my main priority is not only the business, but also to be safe in that area.
Thank you very much, Ms. Popper. Thank you for that presentation and those points. Are you content now?
Yeah, I have more things to say, but I know that the time is short and I don't want to repeat myself, nor I want to.
Yes, I think that unless it's a new point and we are just repeating the same points, I don't think that's going to be helpful. So if it's a new point, Ms. Popper, the members will be happy to hear it. But if it's not, then I think we should move on.
Well, I have few things that I put it on WeTransfer. I don't know if you got it. I could transfer it later on for everybody. It's gonna be a video showing the area not being busy. You have moments when it's really busy when it's an event, and days like last night when it's nothing on the street. That's why I believe
sorry,
that
Ms. Popper,
having
did you
our
say you
static
wanted to show,
security
Ms.
is
Popper,
not.
Ms. Popper, did you say you wanted to show us a video?
It's a video. If you want, I can. You have access to the cameras on the street, but if you want for me to prove the fact that
Ms. Popper, the thing is with these meetings, if evidence such as this is going to be introduced, it needs to be advised. And I'm at a disadvantage because I'm trying to hold this meeting on my phone due to some technical issues. So I would not be able to view this
okay,
video.
then
I'm not entirely certain that seeing the area is going to assist us. We are all aware of the area. We all are Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole councillors. We familiarise ourselves with these areas. I, for one, have looked at your outside your premise and in the area, and the officers, of course, professionally will have a knowledge, as of course will the police. So with the deepest of respect, I don't think seeing a video will bring anything new. So could we move on, or is there anything else you wanted to add?
no, we can move on.
Okay, I'll just ask the members, because I don't want to speak on their behalf in case they don't concur with my view. Councillor Johnson, are you content?
I am content, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Farr, are you content?
Yes, I'm content. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, Ms. Popper. I know this isn't easy for you. I know it's very difficult and you've got an awful lot to say, and sometimes people can repeat themselves, and we're trying to hear everything you've got to say and consider it accordingly. So that said, it's now an opportunity for the members to ask questions with regard to your application, and that's Mr. Wright and Ms. Popper. So I'll start with Councillor Johnson. Councillor Johnson, do you have any questions at this time?
Not at this time, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Farr, do you have any questions at this time?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
I have a couple. You speak of the risk assessment, which I'm not entirely certain where that came from, because all I have is a letter from the police saying they have concerns with regard to opening hours, and then your response. So the risk assessment, what shape would that take? And surely a risk assessment would need to be taken before any such licence were applied for, as something in train that you could have proof or evidence rather than afterwards. So what effect will this risk assessment take, please? So what effect will it have? Thank you.
The risk assessment, and Ms. Popper is perfectly capable of carrying out risk assessments as she does under the Health and Safety at Work Act, as I mentioned. She will assess what events are taking place, the history of such events, the need, if she feels it appropriate, and the times that she feels it is appropriate to engage fully licensed SIA static security, knowing the area. There are days, there are evenings when there are no, hardly any, should I say, customers, as you've already said, when static security would be, yes, a financial burden on the premises when it's not proportionate or appropriate, given the quiet nature of the evening. So she will look at the days, the events, the need for security, the history of those events on the town and on her premises in particular, and decide at that point, with obviously the future in mind, to engage the security staff.
I understand, Mr. Wright. So this is something you're offering which you would do if this committee was so disposed to grant. Something.
Yes, and that is we have offered that as a condition of licence, that we will carry out those.
Could I just ask, just bring in our legal advisor who just wants to say something. Thank you, Mrs. Cole.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify something with Miss Popper, if you don't mind. she mentioned training had been booked for two, one on the 5th and one on the 25th of October. But I just wanted to check, what was that training for? Was it for to be the SIA training?
Yes, it is SIA training. Steve mentioned the fact that I'm perfectly capable to do it myself. Well, I did it until now, but having alcohol in the premises is a different responsibility. That's the reason why I wanted to make sure I'm properly, well, I'm prepared to a high standard to be able to do that. We already talked with 3 different companies to make the initial assessment for the premises to make sure that we start the right way. But if we're not going to move forward with having a supplier for those services, we having on-call security, then I want to make sure that I personally am able to make those assessments and make them correctly, not just according to my experience in the more than.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to check what the training was for.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cole, for that clarification. Thank you. If I could just ask for just confirmation, really. You say that the police have not given you any specific reasons other than they have concerns over the hours and the impact that may have in the area. But what do you understand to be the responsibility of the statutory bodies, i.e. the police in this instance? Because while I appreciate your comments about the area, you say it's the client's responsibility to promote the licensing objectives for her premises. So you've said, whilst I appreciate the comments about the area, it is my client's responsibility to promote the licensing objectives for her premises. But you do understand, of course, that the police also have a responsibility in this instance as well. So I was wondering what your understanding of the responsibility of the statutory bodies was in this instance. Thank you.
They obviously have a right to object to an increase in hours. And I think their concern is what happens on the street, or is what is happening on the street. Now, they, in my opinion, cannot be contributed to London Market alone, which has an excellent record of promoting the licensing objectives. And that is their aim. Miss Popper's aim is to promote the licensing objectives from her premises, not to sell alcohol to drunks, not to sell to underage people, to provide safety for her staff and her customers, which she does excellently. The issues on the street, and I have prepared additional stuff in my summary, have many powers to deal with the problems on the street and to restrict a business, an excellent business, well-run business, because of what happens on the street. In my opinion, it is not appropriate. And I do understand that the council did have a cumulative impact policy when it was relevant, but that policy no longer exists. So to talk about the street, there are many powers at their disposal.
Okay, and my last is also for confirmation. You make a statement in your submission that the history of this premise is excellent and they will continue to work in partnership with the authorities as they have done since taking over the business. They will continue to operate strict policies on the sale of age-restricted products and to provide CCTV evidence, which, when issues occur on the street, as they have done so in the past. You do understand, what is your understanding that this is a requirement and not, it seems to be sort of almost like an offered condition. You do understand that this is, of course, a requirement.
Miss Popper is socially aware and does provide CCTV images to the police to assist with the prevention and detection of crime in the area. She already does that. And she will continue to do that.
Right, thank you. I'm trying to ascertain if you understand that that's a requirement.
We have CCTV and we provide images.
As required?
As required, as requested.
Yes, okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to ascertain. Thank you very much. Okay then, just to ask then, Mrs. Rogers has any questions for the applicant, Mrs. Rogers?
No, I don't. Well, only reference to the training that Linda Cole brought up. It was the door supervisor training. Just to highlight that if she is employing her staff as door supervisors, then she needs to have be approved to do that. So have a registration non-frontline.
Yeah, a license to deploy.
Unless she's employing them through an agency, she won't need it, but it's just that to be aware that she will also need to be registered in order to employ those door supervisors.
Okay, thank you for that. So there are clearly some protocols there to be acknowledged.
Can I say something?
No, Ms. Popper, we'll move on, thank you. We don't want to go into too much detail with regard to the door supervisors, because obviously that's a process that will take its turn. And there are protocols to be acknowledged and observed, which Mrs. Rogers had advisors of. I'm grateful to you, Mrs. Rogers. So could I also now ask, please, if Louise Busfield or Sergeant Gosling have any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If I may just start, just a couple of queries that have arisen since the applicants have spoken. Mr. Wright says that Dorset Police hasn't provided any evidence or anything that might evidence crime and disorder and antisocial behaviour in this part of Old Christchurch Road, and in fact very close to the vicinity of this premises. I've mediated extensively, or attempted to mediate extensively, with Mr. Wright on behalf of the applicant, and last week we did indeed have a Teams meeting where I showed him CCTV from the Charlie Bravo, the town centre cameras, evidencing the antisocial behaviour between 3 a.m. and about 4:15 a.m. some 3 weeks after lockdown, so it was the first week of August. Because I was at pains to ensure that they understood our significant concerns about another premises contributing to this antisocial behaviour and potential crime and disorder, and indeed public safety. So for Mr. Wright to say that I haven't produced any evidence, I don't fully understand what he's referring to.
Okay, that might be something.
I can answer that.
And thank you. That might be something that you want to put in your submission to us, Ms. Busfield, rather than a direct question as to the information provided by the applicant to date. So if you wanted to raise that in your application, your submission, I'd be happy to hear that. Is there any?
Yeah, there's just one other question that's arisen since Mr. Wright has been speaking, and he mentioned that they would only sell alcohol ancillary to hot food, and I was wondering if you could elaborate on that, because that was not included in the application.
Thank you. Question. Thank you, Mr. Wright, if you'd like to answer that.
Yeah, there is a condition offered in the application.
Right. Thank you. Could we all listen, please? It's really difficult when people are talking over each other. I'm just going to put the question again to you again. You would only sell alcohol ancillary to food. Could you explain that, please? Thank you.
There is a condition offered in the application that states between midnight and close, the purchase of hot food such as a pie or sausage roll must be purchased at the time of any service of alcohol. That is offered in the application.
Thank you.
So it's a condition as offered. Is that helpful?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Busfield. Sergeant Gosling, did you have any questions?
Yes, I'll just try and be brief. Just a very quick question for Ms. Popper. Could she please clarify, I think, for the committee, the number of staff that work at the premises currently at any given time?
Thank you. Number of staff that work at the premises at any given time, Ms. Popper. Thank you.
Yeah, we have always one person in the shop, and it can be a second. Well, I'm most of the time around just in case is some incident going on. So you have one person that is in the shop filling shelves and serving the customers. And when it's really busy, it can be brought a second person. I'm living in the same building, so in case of something, I can instantly be there. So that would be what it is right now. The reason I want to say one more thing. The reason why I did the classes is for me to understand and do the things right in the shop. The staff I want to be employed as staff in the shop, not as a security. That's why I didn't want to be mentioned or required to have security hired for the shop. I want us to be prepared. I want to be able to deal with an incident. I know that I need more than what I have right now to hire security. That's why I was not willing to have in the license a standing staff, a door supervisor required. So I know I don't do those classes for us to hire myself or the staff as a door supervisor, but for us to be prepared in case of an incident to deal with the situation properly. Now, as a answer to Mr. Gosling question, if we're gonna need to have 2 staff in the shop, we're gonna have 2 staff in the shop. If it's not busy, then it's gonna be 1 staff in the shop. That would be the answer. It's gonna be depending on how busy is the night. It's gonna be depending on what events are during that night, and it's gonna be depending on how the customers are behaving, because it might be a very busy night, but might be quiet when it comes about incidents.
Thank you. So 1 person at all times, and yourself to assist if necessary, but no other member of staff would be available. It would be yourself. I believe you live on the premise. Thank you for that. Sergeant Gosling, any further questions?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, thank you very much. A very expansive and detailed submission there. I don't have any further questions at this moment in time. I'll just check with the other subcommittee members. Councillor Farr, any further questions?
Yeah, I did have one further.
Okay, thank you, Councillor
Farr. I'm just a little bit sceptical about the proposal of with the sale of alcohol. It's only sold with food. Can that? I just wonder if that's a problem that's going to cause a problem if people want to buy alcohol.
We can do that, Councillor Farr. We can ask our legal advisor or indeed our licensing officer if they have any comment regard to that. Thank you, Councillor Farr.
One of the reasons is we do not serve drunk people. I must emphasize.
Mr. Wright, thank you.
Sorry, I thought
please only speak if you're asked to speak. I won't have people just proffering information. I've asked my officers, please, if they have a comment on that. Thank you. Mrs. Cole or Mrs. Rogers, do you have a comment on that question from the subcommittee member? Thank you.
Well, I can make a comment.
Thank you, Mrs. Cole.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it is a condition that's being offered. It's on page 20 of your agenda papers. It's set out in section MB of the application, just for clarity for you. And if they wish to offer that condition, they can. And what the applicant is saying is between the hours of, well, from midnight, before they allow somebody to buy alcohol, they will also be requesting that they buy food. I understand the premises is like a little mini market. It sells food, so yeah, if they can offer it and they can see what happens. Yeah.
So that would be a requirement if we were so to accept that condition, Councillor.
It is an offer. It's certainly an offered. It's certainly an offered condition, so you could include that. Yes.
Are you happy with that? Yes, thank you. Thank you for drawing that clarification out. It's always very useful. Thank you. And Councillor Johnson, any further questions with regards to the applicant?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Johnson. So we now move on to, thank you very much, Mr. Wright and Ms. Popper, for your submissions. You will have time at the end of the meeting for your summaries, where you can pick up any last minute bits and bobs, and of course you will be able to question our responsible authorities as we move through. So we now have the responsible authorities. So are you both wishing to speak? If you are, that's fine. And who would like to go first? Ms. Busfield, should we ask you to go first?
That's fine. Yeah, thank you very much. Indeed, I will keep it brief because I think that we've covered a lot of the concerns initially in my representation, which is based on and purely on the matters in Old Christchurch Road, we do not have any concerns about the operator of London Market. She engages very well with Dorset Police, and I believe, I'm proud to say, we have a very good relationship with the premises. However, the concerns are that police and the other authorities are working extensively on every premises in that vicinity with regard to dispersal, to get people to leave the area after they've had the night out, to disperse safely, in some premises to disperse up Old Christchurch Road, other large venues to disperse towards a different area, so that the town can become safe and quiet after a certain time once all these licensed premises have closed. It's our firm belief, and this again is borne out by serious incidents that have occurred in the last month, 2 or 3 serious incidents which have been reported in the Echo, as well as the CCTV that I have shared with the applicant, which evidences the potential for disorder when people don't disperse. The dispersal is compromised when there are other places for customers to go to continue their nights out as an extension of their night out. So when they've left the club or late night premises and they still find that there's an offering further down the road where they can go, they can continue to consume alcohol. That is the concern. Now, whilst we appreciate that the operator does manage her premises robustly, the CCTV that I shared with the applicant last week does bear out that nobody would be able to safely operate a premises without any security on the door in these early hours of the morning, regardless of whether it is done on a risk assessment. Some of the nighttime activity in Bournemouth is quite unpredictable. As a result of the pandemic, there's no real pattern of behaviour at the moment. So I believe it'd be very difficult to anticipate large crowds gathering in the vicinity of her premises and any control being able to be managed if there is not security on the door. And I'm saying this from the perspective of public safety, but also safety for the premises, for her staff and her customers. And I think that is the stumbling block where we haven't been able to mediate and agree conditions for SIA. The applicant has offered to subscribe to a mobile SIA provision whereby if there is a need, then they undertake to be at the premises within a 5-minute period. Our view, and again borne out by CCTV, is that sometimes you don't have the benefit of 5 minutes grace before serious crime and disorder ensues. So that is really our main concern. It's over the extended opening hours and the safety, maintaining and upholding the licensing objective of public safety.
Thank you,
Busfield,
that's very clear.
Very briefly, very briefly, in terms of the food ancillary to alcohol, whilst this is a condition that we would expect, for example, in a restaurant, in order to ensure that it is operated as a restaurant and doesn't morph into a bar or something of that nature, recent legislation during COVID times has evidenced that if people want another drink, they'll buy that sausage roll, they'll buy that pie. They won't necessarily consume it, but they will buy it. So unfortunately, I don't believe that will be sufficient reassurance for us that it might sober them up a little bit.
Yes, thank you very much for raising that point. That's extremely useful. Thank you, Ms. Busfield. Sergeant Gosling, do you have something to add to the submission? Thank you.
Yes, please, Chair.
Thank you.
I'm acutely aware of the amount of effort that Louise has put in to try and mediate conditions that we feel are sensible and appropriate for the area. I'd just like to really reiterate the issue that the days of door staff being deployed only for your traditional pubs and clubs, they are long gone. It is very common now for door staff to be assigned to takeaways and small supermarkets, all designed to protect the staff and protect those customers, especially during those high risk times. And given the location of this premises being near to some very late night premises, I feel that's absolutely appropriate to protect both the public and the staff at those premises. And my experience is that it generally is just one member of staff at that shop. It wouldn't not ordinarily demand more because it is relatively small and fairly easy to manage, but the dynamic will change dramatically. And you will have heard from us and Mr. Wright that the premises does perform well. And I'd like to say that they do perform very, very well. And that will be a large part due to the fact that their alcohol license currently only extends to 2000 hours. To extend beyond them will put them in a whole different area to operate within. And I appreciate that Mr. Popper may well be experienced in that field, but this area and those times are a particular risk. And without the proper safeguarding, there is a risk towards public safety and safety of any staff that are present there. And when we look across other premises that are in that area, I know that Louise has looked to try and align hours to be close to or to match what's already existing. So I think that demonstrates as well that we're looking to be consistent, and I'm sure that the committee will agree that to avoid further complaints of noise in that area, which I know that does come into ourselves and to BCP, it's important to not extend that drinking beyond the hours of the existing premises. And having alcohol 24 hours a day at this premises will certainly risk that and make our lives very, very difficult in trying to police that environment. I've got nothing further to add.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Gosling. Members, now your opportunity to raise any questions at this particular time. Councillor Farr, are there any questions for the police?
No further questions, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnson, do you have any questions for the police?
Thank you, Chair. Just one for a point of absolute clarity, just so it's said in the exact words that I want to hear it said, in that this is in that the concerns are not due to the applicant's running of the premises. It's purely a thing about location. Is that correct?
Yes, I have the clarification on that. Thank you.
As we are paying links to support, we are very confident in the operator of the premises. However, we would not be confident if the premises continued to sell alcohol beyond 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever the hours the subcommittee offers or agrees, that the operator is able to control the element that might be going into her premises to purchase alcohol. Hence the discussions around the need for static door security for the protection of herself, her staff and customers.
Thank you very much. And you rather shot my fox, Councillor Johnson, but I suppose for further clarification, just to be absolutely certain, you state in your letter to Mr. Wright, Ms. Busfield, that there are no conditions offered which may mitigate the impact these extended hours could have on crime and disorder. And we've heard from Day, in fact, what those conditions could be, but they are indeed not being offered by the applicant. Is that appropriate? Is that the case? Thank you.
Yes, that's right.
Right, okay. So that is clearly stated. Thank you very much. Okay, so now, Mr. Wright, an opportunity for you to raise questions of the responsible authorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask, I must say that the premises opens until 6 AM and they are asked for alcohol and they refuse that service of alcohol. What incidents have you had at the premises at 3, 4, 5, 6 in the morning?
Okay, thank you.
We directly attributable to the premises, as we've stated more than once, we haven't had any incidents. We don't have any concerns about the operators of the premises within the current license conditions. What we do have concerns about are significant incidents of crime and disorder and public safety, which one of which was even reported in the Echo from the 22nd of September, where your licensee, Miss Popper, assisted the casualties, the victims. We do not have any incidents directly attributable to the premises, but a concern about how that premises would manage the control of the public safety and public protection of customers seeking that late night drink for her staff and the general public.
Thank you, Ms. Busfield. Mr. Wright, your further question, thank you.
But do you accept that Miss Popper and her staff protect their customers and themselves suitably until 6 a.m. in the morning currently?
I'm unable to comment on that.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's a question which, unless the officer is indeed there herself, she wouldn't be able to answer that. Sergeant Gosling, did you come in?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind there, Chair. I think Mr. Wright has raised a really valid point there, that as it stands, the premises during those late night hours, the 24 hours a day, is a small grocery store. And it will be well known to locals as a small grocery store and somewhere where alcohol is not available. Once, if the committee decide to allow that alcohol to extend into those early morning hours, the dynamic of that store will entirely change. And that's our experience of those type of premises. And the risks that will present themselves to Miss Popper and any other staff that may or may not be present will change dramatically. And it's our experience which has led to us objecting on that basis and asking for these conditions to be in place. It's not our intention to cause difficulty for the business, but as it is the same for yourselves, unfortunately, financial constraints are not something that is within our remit, as they are obviously not for yourselves. We are there to protect the public, to protect the staff, and to try and do everything that we can to reduce crime and disorder. And our experience tells us that this is the best way to do that.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Gosling. Mr. Wright, any further questions or anything else you'd like to raise?
Just a comment to say that noise was not part of the representation, which was mentioned by Sergeant Gosling.
Okay, thank you for that. Ms. Popper, do you have any further questions?
Yes, I do. I would want to ask if having trained staff in SIA trained staff, even if I cannot hire that person as SIA staff, but as a sales assistant or myself being trained, wouldn't that help? Is it important for me to be able to hire a security person as security person, or to have staff that is trained as security person in case of an incident to mitigate the danger of violence?
Okay, so you're sort of suggesting a hybrid there, Ms. Popper, somebody who can do both roles.
Yeah.
Sergeant Gosling, could you assist, please?
Yes, of course, and I understand where Miss Popper feels that there would be some value in that. But we find this with many events and larger premises that we really do need to distinguish the roles. It's to ensure that one member of staff isn't overly burdened and that people are clear on their responsibilities. And it's important to ensure that whoever is employed in that role can perform that role without being distracted by other pressures of perhaps a secondary role. So we feel that it should be a dedicated person who's responsible solely for reducing crime and disorder and maintaining that safety for the public.
I totally agree. What I'm saying is I cannot hire a security as a security. My company cannot do that. I don't mind to have the person allocated to do that job in there, But I cannot, at this point, my company, I cannot hire myself as a security. I cannot hire one of my staff as a security, even if has.
Do you have a question? Thank you. It's not about making statements, unfortunately, about what you're unable to do, with the deepest of respect. We're very welcome to listen to the questions that you might have to raise for the committee to consider. Thank you.
The question is it important the person to be hired as security, or is it important the person to be allocated the role of keeping the place safe and having that accreditation, having that badge, to say so? Is it important to be hired like that, or is it important to have that role into the shop?
Okay, well, I think Sergeant Gosling has answered your question, but my understanding of that answer, Ms. Popper, was that it is not a good idea. It's certainly not advised to mix the two roles, to keep those roles distinct, so that the security staff are working as security staff and can concentrate on that and don't have any other duties, and the sales staff indeed are not put at risk with regard to having to consider any responsibilities as security. So I think it is those two distinct roles cannot be mixed. I believe that is what Sergeant Gosling said. I hope that helps. I know it's not what you want to hear, but I think that is the case. I will just refer back quickly to Sergeant Gosling just for confirmation on that.
Thank you, Chair. That's exactly right. It is important that they are, and I believe there are conditions within Annex 1, I think, of the licence that detail the fact that SIA staff must be properly hired and assigned the role.
Thank you very much. That's helpful. If there are no further questions, right? I'm not hearing there are any further questions.
One short thing. On the street are other premises with license until 3 and 5. Few doors down you have BH1 Express Shop or something like that. And as far as I know, they do not have the security. What is the impact of having a new shop comparing with?
Ms. Popper, thank you. Whilst I understand that question totally, we are only able to consider your application. We're not able to consider other premises in that way. So that's not something which we would be able to actually deal with. Okay, we're just looking at your application and the effect that you would have upon the greater community, if that's associative.
I
really do empathise with where you're coming from, but it's just not helpful because that information is not something that we can consider, even if it were answered, if that explains it.
I understand what you're trying.
I did get an indication, Ms. Popper, thank you. I did get an indication from Mrs. Cole. Mrs. Cole, I apologise. I believe you wanted to come in to make an observation at some stage, or are you content now?
Chair, I just wanted a little bit of clarification from Sergeant Gosling or Ms. Busfield, but the application that's been made is to extend the sale of alcohol, and Sergeant Gosling and Ms. Busfield made it clear they're looking for static security. So I was just wondering what hours that Dorset Police feel that security should be made a condition of the licence, if you were minded to extend
we'll get clarification for that. I think it sits within the application, but we'll get clarification of that. Thank you very much for raising it, Mrs. Cole. Sergeant Gosling, can you comment, please?
Aye.
Yeah, I'm just going to refer to Louise on that one, if that's okay.
Thank you. Mrs. Busfield, thank you. The hours staff may be required.
For the perspective of upholding public safety and the protection, as I say, of staff, customers and the premises, we would expect to see static security from 2300 hours onwards.
What, till 6 a.m?
If indeed the licence were granted until 6 a.m, then yes, certainly until 6 a.m. Although it is our submission that to extend the licensable hours until 6 a.m. would not be promoting the licensing objectives.
This is on till 3. Yes, I was just looking to see what the licensing hours, 8 till 3. The licensing hours actually applied for until 3 a.m. Could I have some confirmation, please? Thank you, Miss Rogers, Mrs. Rogers. I'm just thumbing through, trying to find the application hours. Can somebody assist?
Sorry,
The request is for 24-hour opening and 24-hour sale of alcohol.
So it would be, if it was 24 hours, that was, I think, why Mrs. Cole was raising the question, Ms. Busfield, that yes, the license is actually for 24-hour license. So what time would the staff need in the morning? I doubt they need to be there at 10 o'clock in the morning the following day. So it's just a suggestion as to some timings. Thank you.
As I discussed with Mr. Wright in our extensive mediation pre-application and indeed post-application, we would be looking at static security from 2300 hours until 0600 hours.
0600, that's what I thought. That's really useful. Thank you very much. Okay. So that is the first time. Thank you, Mrs. Cole, for raising that. It's extremely helpful. So with no further questions, then I think we have covered this. Yes, Mr. Wright.
Sorry, I didn't get a chance to ask. So if the police are suggesting that we have static security and a 24-hour license is granted, they only wish to have static security until 0600, but the premises may continue to sell alcohol for the remainder. Is that what I am understanding?
Sergeant Gosling?
Yeah, our view is that it would not be appropriate to have it was very difficult to mediate a kind of a secondary condition around the static security. Although it's really, really important to us, the primary objection for us is to actually is the presence of that provision beyond an acceptable hour. What we're trying to safeguard against is if the committee felt it appropriate to extend the provision into those hours, then we feel that appropriate SIA should be attributed to the premises. So really our first plea, if you like, is to not allow that provision to extend into those hours, and secondary, if you were minded to do so, that there would be SIA security. So we're not supportive. I think what Mr. Wright there is trying to perhaps implies that we are supportive of the 24-hour license, and we're certainly not.
Yes. Okay, I hope that confirms that, Mr.
Thank
Wright.
you, Chair.
Certainly confirms it for the panel. Thank you, Sergeant Gosling. I'll just pop back to Mrs. Rogers. Mrs. Rogers, do you have any questions for the responsible authorities?
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
And just for clarity, do the subcommittee members have any questions before we move on? Councillor Johnson?
No, Chair, not at this point.
Councillor Farr?
No, not at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farr. So if we are all content with regard to questions raised, I hope that I have been able to be as open as possible and allowed people to raise questions where they are pertinent and relevant rather than statements. I hope there's nothing unasked or unanswered at this moment in time. But if there is anything which does spring, because of the importance, obviously, of every application, especially to our applicants, if you would like to raise it perhaps in your summation, if it is burning, and we can get an answer for you, I hope that assists. So now we'll move on to all parties who have the opportunity to sum up.
Chair, sorry to interrupt, it's Michelle the clerk. Just to say, Ms. Popper has indicated that she wishes to speak, and Linda Cole has indicated that she has something else to add as well. Apologies.
Okay, I would, unless it's a very new point, Ms. Popper, or a question that already hasn't been asked, then I would ask that you reserve it for your summation. But if it is a new question, then please go ahead. It's very difficult. I can't see who wants to speak on my phone because my phone is 4 inches by 2 inches. So you will forgive me. And thank you, Michelle, for your indications and support. Ms. Popper?
I wanted to ask related with the guiding the time when the security is needed. I would want to ask why 11 o'clock and not later than that? From our reports is showing that the incidents start appearing, or the drunk customers start appearing in the area around 2 o'clock when they come from the clubs and pubs like Cameo and whatsoever. So somewhere between 2 and 3 o'clock, that's when the problems can appear in the area. May I ask, can we look into that starting time for the security? Again, I understand the reason why the police ask for it, but is any chance to look into that time and correlate it with the number of incidents or the time when the violent incidents start? Because from our records, they don't start at 11. They start somewhere after 2 o'clock.
Thank you, Sergeant Gosling or Ms. Busfield, if you'd like to answer as to why you are asking in this instance with regard to SIA that it be from 1100 hours till still 0600 hours and not at 2 a.m. in the morning till 600. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, without something about that. Again, without sort of wishing to reiterate, our plea really is for those hours not to be extended. However, if they were to be extended, the attributing of SIA to the premises from 2300, in our opinion, and what we can evidence, of course, from our extensive data that we have available to us, is that the rate of problems do occur from then on. I appreciate that Miss Popper has her own records, albeit that they will be assigned only to the store. Ours looks much broader at the town centre. Whilst I can't lay my hands on that data right now, our experience is that the nighttime economy does begin to take flight from our point of view with regards to demand from 2300 hours.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Mrs. Cole, you wanted to come in with one final comment, and then I'm going to move on to the motions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It was just again a question from Dorset Police. I understand that they're not confirming or agreeing that they wish the sale of alcohol to be extended past 8 o'clock, but somewhere earlier Ms. Busfield did talk about alcohol to 11 or midnight, so I was just wondering, are there any hours they would be prepared for sale to go beyond 8 o'clock?
Could you say that again? We are moving all over the place here with regard to what's applied for, and we seem to be under negotiation tactics at the minute. So could you just confirm what you meant by your question, please?
Well, it's not no negotiation. I just want clarity from what Dorset Police have told us. So the objection is to the licence. Are they against the sale of alcohol after 8 p.m?
Yeah.
Or are they against the sale of alcohol after 11 or 12 p.m? I think was the comments that were made earlier.
Yeah, that's a really helpful clarification and a clear question there. Thank you, Mrs. Cole. Most useful. Sergeant Gosling, could you respond, please?
Once again, I'll refer to Ms. Busfield, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Busfield, could you respond, please?
Indeed, I can. And I will echo the Sergeant's comments that any additional provision will cause us concern. However, in line with other licensed premises in the vicinity, we would suggest, and this has been borne out by the mediation that the applicant and I have been engaged in, that we would view 3 o'clock in the morning as being a sensible compromise, with the necessary precautions and safeguards in place. But again, that would not be something that we would support or that the senior officers would necessarily support. But as I say, in line with other licensed premises in the area, it's something that we wouldn't really be able to object to, and we would just have to continue working very closely with the premises to ensure the licensing objectives were being promoted.
Thank you. So I think that in essence what we have for confirmation, just so that we clear any confusion, is that licensable hours with full SIA door security would be acceptable till 3 a.m. if that was so disposed to be put forward, conditioned that, or if the condition were offered, we could accept or consider it, that door staff would need to be in place until 3 a.m. in the morning, and indeed the premises would close at 3 a.m. in the morning. Is that correct? Am I correct in that clarification, Ms. Busfield?
Sorry, just Sergeant Gosling again here. No, I think it would be very difficult to require the premises to close at the 3 a.m. but to have the provision of alcohol beyond 3 a.m. would cause a significant
that is indeed what we meant, that the alcohol no longer be available until after 3 a.m. in the morning.
Absolutely. I think the 3 a.m. I think is an indication, hopefully, to the committee that we have tried to be as sensible as possible and as generous as possible, accepting the viewpoint that the business is obviously under strain, as are many others. But to extend it from the existing 8 p.m. An additional 7 hours, 7 days a week, I think is extremely generous and really sort of will require that additional support and monitoring from our point of view. But we feel that it would match other premises in the area, whilst we do accept that it is in probably a slightly more risky area than those existing premises are.
And that would indeed be with the full SIA staff requirement?
Yes, it would have to be absolutely in line with all the premises along there, takeaways and various other nighttime economy premises, yeah.
And are there any other requirements which would need to be considered?
I think the majority, as alluded by Mr. Wright, have been accepted and or already implemented. So they are our two key requirements.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Gosling. Thank you, Mrs. Cole, for raising that. That's been really helpful, actually, to be able to explore that further. Thank you. So, everybody, if we are so content then, no more questions, points of clarification, etc., we'll move to our summations. So we'll ask the party who spoke last to go first. So Ms. Busfield and Sergeant Wright, if you would like to summarise with regard to this matter. Thank you.
Yeah, well, in brief, we can just state that Dorset Police would not be supportive of any extension of the provision of alcohol due to the crime and disorder and the risk to public safety, as evidenced in 3 or 4 significant incidents since the 4th of August. However, as Sergeant Gosling has alluded to, we are supportive. We recognise the need for small businesses to survive after this particularly difficult time. And although it could potentially lead to increased demand on the services, the police specifically, we would view a 3 a.m. sale of alcohol to be a generous extension to their current 8 o'clock. And again, monitor the impact of that additional provision going forwards.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Busfield. You do realise that, of course, fiscal matters are not a matter for this committee. Therefore, with regard to any impact on the business of COVID, that's not something that we would consider. Is it something that you would consider?
No, we don't consider that, but we do consider the operator to be a robust operator and a sound operator, and she has engaged very well. So in terms of supporting the business in maintaining and upholding the licensing objectives, we're very keen to continue to work with her and support her and engage with her in any way that we can.
Yes, indeed, and that is completely beyond question that the business has not been run in exemplary fashion by Ms Popper and her staff. So I think that just needs stating on the record that that has been the case. Thank you, Ms Busfield. So now it's the opportunity of Mr Wright and Ms Popper, if you'd like to sum up, please. Thank you with regard to your application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I must stress there is no cumulative impact policy. So the police are referring to the cumulative impact, the issues on the street. The video I did witness, I could not see any violence at that time. It shows people in high spirits following months of lockdown due to the pandemic. Just for clarification, there has been no need to review this premises, the licence, or take any remedial action whatsoever. So this premises, as is accepted, is a well-run premises. We can control the premises. We have controlled the premises, and we will continue to control the premises. If we can control the premises until 3 AM with SIA security, then I submit that we can control the premises 24/7 with SIA security, obviously going later into the morning. There are enforcement protocols mentioned that can be used, targeting of agreed problem premises and high-risk premises, which require greater attention. London Market is not part of this. A lighter touch, and I quote, a lighter touch is for low-risk premises or those well-run, such as London Market. And this is quite clear in section 182 guidance at 1417. The applicant's premises is not subject to scrutiny or intervention of any kind. And Ms Popper will continue to positively contribute to the area. And if SIA security are deemed necessary, then they will be employed for longer if a 24-hour licence is granted. I think Sergeant Gosling is correct about the opening hours. The premises may open 24/7 for non-licensable activities, and we would obviously wish to continue with that. The police and the local authority have many other methods at their disposal. Specific powers to address issues in the area, not restricting a premises from operating, or the imposition of inappropriate burdens and conditions. Members should remember that the premises is currently open until 1, 3 and 6 AM and have still had no incidents, and the same standards will apply. If the licence may stipulate a closing time for licensing activities themselves, then we would want to sell bread, milk, newspapers, etc., and continue to open 24/7, which one may say is contrary to the licence, but that's a moot point which we haven't got time to argue. My client is a responsible retailer of alcohol and takes her responsibility extremely seriously. I'm sure Ms Popper will not mind me saying that she felt hurt by the representation when all she does is operate her premises to the highest standards. Ms Popper is responsible for her premises, which is compliant and without complaint or the need for enforcement action. She is not, however, responsible for the surrounding area or the actions of less socially responsible retailers or revellers. And I think it should weigh heavily on the committee's mind that this is an excellent run premises with no issues, and door staff, if required, for the 24-hour operation obviously will be employed, and that's within your gift to insist that happens. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr Wright. Is that a conditional offer?
Pardon?
Are you offering that, or are you waiting for the committee if they were so disposed to grant action?
If if the committee are minded to grant the license for 24/7, we will have security, SIA security on the premises, static security on the premises. But we submit that if we can successfully manage the premises until 3 a.m, we can successfully manage the premises until 6 a.m. and beyond, and currently do until 6 a.m.
Thank you very much. Ms. Popper, I feel it only fair to ask if there's anything you'd like to add to Mr. Wright's summation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the meeting today. To be fair, because of the history of the shop in there, and because the longest license you have in the area is 5 o'clock, so you have licenses of 3 and 5 o'clock, and as far as I know, without security, I was hoping that we're gonna get something similar, given the fact that one of them is few doors down from us, and it's a new premise with no history. I'm not referring to them as a precedent. I refer to them because, as far as I'm concerned, they are my competition, and I have to be able to compete with someone that is just further down the road, someone that is new, and be able to sustain similar prices or similar condition for the customers. And as far as my business is concerned, as I said, I'm interested in the safety, but I'm interested in also have a shop running, because if further down the road, few doors down, another shop is a liquor shop, and it's able to sell alcohol without having the expense of security, stand-in security or door supervisor, then I'm not going to be able to compete with that kind of shop. I won't be able to, even though I have the experience of being there 3 years and providing with the best service I know and best safe condition I know, I won't be able to compete. I know that's not your responsibility, and
Yes, it
probably is not your concern, but I have to put it out there.
So could we move on? Could you move on to your second part of your summation, please? Because obviously profit is not something we can consider, regrettably, but we under the Act, the Licensing Act 2003, it's not something that's in our gift. So would you like to move on to your further points? Thank you.
Yeah, I would find it fair, and I understand the requirement from the police. I know that the area itself, the town center, start being busy and violent from 11 o'clock, but the specific area where the shop is starts becoming potentially violent between 2 and 3 o'clock. And I would find it fair to be asked to have a security after that time until 6 o'clock, let's say, when indeed it's a high risk of having potentially violent behavior, and then that would be according to the rest of the licenses, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, what do you mean by 20? What do you mean by 20 o'clock, Ms. Popper? Please, just for clarification, what does 20 o'clock mean? What time is that?
No, 2 o'clock. So after between 2 and 3 o'clock, the area becomes busier or potentially violent. The area where the shop is, the town center itself, indeed, as the sergeant mentioned, becomes being busy and potentially violent after 11 o'clock. What I'm trying to say is that I understand the requirement from the police of having a security in there. I might think that I can manage without it, but I understand why they would require it. What I'm saying is that probably for the area where the shop is, the time when the security might be needed is not 11 o'clock, but 3 o'clock, when the clubs and pubs are closing, the clubs are closing and the customers are coming towards front of my shop, towards Bar Republic, towards Camel Bar. So that's what I was trying to mention. I'm trying to say that the area itself, it becomes potentially violent between 2 and 3 o'clock. I would say 3 o'clock when they come from Cameo. I would say that I find it achievable to manage it until that time without having a door security. And I understand that after that time, the police it is gonna be worried about the safety of us. But before that, I believe we can manage it in the same way the other licensed shop manages further down the road, not far from us.
Thank you, Mr. Popper. I think we understand that. We understand that now. Is there anything further you'd like to add?
No, that would be all. Sorry for talking a lot. I'm just trying to protect my business and trying somehow to remind that we do the best, and if we need, we're gonna bring them in. I just don't want to be forced into conditions that are harder to work with than the rest of my competition, because at the end of the day, that's what they are for me. I know that's not what they are for you, but for me to have my business running, I have to be able to compete with the shop further down the road, which is not far at all from my shop.
Thank you very much, Ms. Popper. We certainly understand your sentiment. Thank you. Okay, so with that said then, Mrs. Rogers, do you have any, sorry, Ms. Rogers, any summation from you as our last speaker?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I hope that everybody's felt they've had the opportunity to raise all the questions and get all the answers, the points of clarification. My gratitude to our legal officer and our licensing officer for the information which they've been able to provide and the points they've raised, and also for the members for their questions. So we'll move on then to conclude the hearing. And at the end of this meeting, the subcommittee are going to adjourn in private with the legal advisor and the clerk to deliberate. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be provided within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day in which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations. The notification decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate, and I'll ask our legal advisor, Mrs. Cole, if she'd kindly explain the right of appeal, please. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Cole.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There will be a right of appeal to the decision that the subcommittee make today, and that appeal should be made to Dorset Magistrates Court within 21 days of the written confirmation.
Thank you very much. So I would ask then Mr. Wright and Ms. Popper if you would leave us, please, because we're going into our next meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance today. We will get that decision to you as soon as possible. Thank you. And I will just ask that we take a 5-minute break, please, members and officers, before we do start. So we'll convene again at 10 to 12. Is everybody happy? Just a short convenience break. Yes, I'm seeing nodding heads. Okay. So can we stop the live stream, please, until 10 to 12? Thank you. and welcome back to this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee, September the 28th, 2020. And our next item is agenda item 6, which is Splinters, which is 11 to 12 Church Street, Christchurch, BH 231BW. And an application has been received for a variation of the premises licence for the premises known as Splinters at the above address. And this matter is brought for the Licensing Subcommittee for determination. So I'll ask each participant to introduce themselves and state their role. So my name is Councillor Judy Butt and I'm Chairman of the Licensing Committee, and I'm Chairman of this subcommittee today for the purposes of the business before us. So I'd like to introduce Councillor Dwayne Farr, please.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Dwayne Farr, member of the Licensing Subcommittee and ward member for Kinson. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farr. And Councillor Toby Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Toby Johnson, ward member for Alden and Bourne Valley and member of this subcommittee.
Thank you. And for the purposes of record, I am a ward member for Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo in Poole. Thank you. So now we introduce Sarah Rogers. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Rogers, Senior Licensing Officer, BCP Council.
Thank you, Rogers. And Mr. Muirhead, Nathan Muirhead, the applicant. If you'd like to introduce yourselves, please.
Very good morning to you, Nathan Muirhead, and I'm one of the directors of Tiki Bar Limited.
Thank you, Mr. Muirhead. And Chantel Strong.
Hello, I am Chantel Strong and I'm the other director for Tiki Bar Limited.
Thank you very much. It's just to make sure you're here, really, so it's nice to do an introduction just to get to know everybody, okay? Put everybody at their ease. Thank you. And Mrs. Cutler.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Cutler and I'm the clerk to the Licensing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Penny, who has come along to make representation. Mr. Penny.
Good morning, my name's Ian Penny. I have the Old 8 Bell shop opposite Splinters and we also live on the premises as well.
Thank you, Mr. Penny. And last but no means least, Mrs. Cole, if you'd like to introduce yourself. Mrs. Cole, are you back with us?
Sorry, I had my mute on. It's Mrs. Cole. I'm
difficult today.
I'm the legal advisor to the subcommittee today.
And pivotal in today's hearing. Thank you very much, Mrs. Cole. Thank you. Okay, so moving on. In addition, today, and we're very grateful for them because we are having some technical issues, we've got a Democratic Services Officer, Mr. Jones, who's providing technical support. He is there for us, but he doesn't take any part in the meeting other than to keep us safe and communicating with each other. So before I run through the procedure, I'd just like to check that all persons who've given notice of their intention to speak have been identified. That's the 3 of you today as our guests. And any persons who wishes to withdraw representation or wishes not to speak has been identified. If not, then you are free to speak now. Okay, everybody's content. So I'll just run through and explain the proposed procedure and order of speaking for the hearing as follows today. The licensing officer will present her report. The applicant will then make their application. Questions of the applicant by all parties then, and the members of the subcommittee will go first. Our responsible authorities and other persons will make their representations, and that will be Mr. Penny on this occasion as an objector. And then questions to the responsible authorities and other persons with members of the committee going first. All parties will be given an opportunity to sum up with the party who spoke last to go first. The hearing will then conclude and the subcommittee will deliberate in private with our legal advisor and our clerk. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, which for record is today. And the notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. So I'll ask all parties to confirm that they are happy with that proposed procedure, or if not, to make representations. So Mrs. Rogers, are you content?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Muirhead, are you content?
Yes, thank you.
And is it Miss or Mrs. Strong?
Miss.
Miss, are you happy with Miss?
Yes, happy with Miss.
Okay, thank you, Miss Strong. And are you so content?
Yes, I am.
And Mr. Penny?
Yes, I'm content. Thank you.
You're content. And Mrs. Cole?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. So I'm just getting a few messages coming up on the screen. Get rid of those. Okay, so finally, And most importantly, may I please remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they've already given in writing, but to expand on their written representations, and all questions will be asked through the chairman, and there'll be no cross-examination of parties. Thank you. So I'll now ask our licensing officer, Mrs. Rogers, to present her report. Thank you, Mrs. Rogers.
Thank you very much. This application is for variation of the premises licence at Splinters, which is described as a fine dining restaurant situated close to the Priory in Christchurch. The premises are currently licensed for on and off sales of alcohol from 10 AM to midnight on Monday to Saturday and noon until 11:30 PM on Sundays, with extensions on Good Fridays and Christmas Day. The premises also have the benefit of late night refreshment. Application is made to increase the hours for licensable activities and add live and recorded music as set out in my report. Current conditions on the licence, namely 11, 12, 15 and 16, have been requested to be removed as part of this application, and additional conditions have been offered and also agreed with Dorset Police to further promote the licensing objectives. Environmental Health originally made representation to this application on the grounds of the prevention of public nuisance. Following successful mediation with the applicant, an additional 7 conditions have been agreed. Therefore, this representation has been withdrawn. A copy of these agreed conditions have been forwarded for your information. 3 representations remain from nearby residents who believe that to grant the application will undermine the prevention of public nuisance licensing objective. The applicant has responded to each one personally to clarify the nature of the variation, and a copy of the agreed conditions with Environmental Health has also been provided to them from myself. No representations were received from any of the other responsible authorities. As always, should this application be granted and the applicant fails to operate in accordance with the licence and conditions attached to it, they will be aware that any of the responsible authorities or any other person may request a review of the licence at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. Could I just ask, we don't seem to have a representative from Environmental Health, or are you fielding those questions, Mrs. Rogers?
No, as I just said, I did distribute to Democratic Services day before yesterday the 7 conditions that have been agreed. So you clearly haven't seen them.
Environmental Health?
Yeah, so Environmental Health have withdrawn their representation because they've agreed conditions with the applicant.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry, but I was totally unaware of that. I don't know if my subcommittee members were also unaware. Councillor Johnson, Councillor Farr, were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't before now, just hearing, but I heard Mrs. Rogers say it, so I'm.
So I sent an email to Democratic Services.
That's a glitch in our information. So we will need some verification of actually what those conditions are, and it rather changes matters, does it not?
I will send them, I'll resend them, but they were sent on Monday morning, 9:15.
Apologies, I haven't received those. I will go and look into that now whilst you continue, and I'll get that forwarded.
These things happen. It's not a problem. I don't have the benefit of being able to see that on a screen because I'm looking at everything on a phone, and you're all extremely tiny.
Would
Okay.
you like me to read them out to you?
I wonder whether you could read them out, and I can pray say thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Number 1, all audio from the music system shall be played at background level only. Number 2, live music must be unamplified and at background levels only. Number 3, all windows and external doors shall be kept closed after 9 PM or at any time when regulated entertainment takes place, except for the immediate access and egress of persons. Number 4, there shall be no admittance or readmittance to the premises after half midnight, except for patrons permitted to temporarily leave the block. Number 5, patrons permitted to temporarily leave and then re-enter the premises to smoke. After 9 PM, this shall be limited to 4 persons at any one time. Number 6, patrons permitted to temporarily leave and then re-enter the premises shall not be permitted to take drinks or glass containers with them after 9 PM. And finally, number 7, the premises licence holder shall ensure that any patrons drinking and or smoking outside the premises do so in an orderly manner and are supervised by staff so as to ensure that there is no public nuisance or obstruction of the public highway.
Right. What I would like is, if we can track that down, I would very much like a copy sent to our members and also to Mr. Penny, so he can have an understanding of those conditions which are now so offered. It may support him, it may assist him in what he wants to say to us, it may assure him.
Yeah, I had sent a copy to Mr. Penny. Yes, did you receive yours, Mr. Penny?
Yes, I did receive and I responded. Thank you.
And I also had a response from Mrs. Mackey as well, who's not attending today.
Chair,
Okay,
I've just forwarded Mrs. Rogers' email from yesterday to yourself and Councillor Johnson and Councillor Farr.
I'm at a severe disadvantage because I can't.
Because you can't look at your emails. I appreciate that. Your colleagues may be able to. I don't know Councillor Johnson and Councillor Farr. Are you able to access your email?
Yes, no, I've seen that now.
I've just forwarded it to you
Farr,
now.
are you content? Have you managed to pop into your email?
I haven't seen it yet, but I'll refresh my emails.
Just have it. I've literally only sent it a couple of 2 minutes ago.
This is good. This is good. Okay, then. So with that in mind, we have the agreement then of environmental health. They've withdrawn their objection, and the police, in fact, were happy and had agreed 7 conditions, of which we do have, because that was put in the initial report. Thank you very much for that. So thank you for your report, Mrs. Rogers. Are there any questions, apart from the one I've just raised, of course? Yes, thank you, Mrs. Cutler, for forwarding that information. Are there any questions for Mrs. Rogers? Mr. Johnson, Councillor Johnson, any questions?
No, thank you, Chair, not at this time.
Mr. Farr, any questions?
No, thank you, not at this time.
Okay, and are there any questions for, and this is on points of fact of Mrs. Rogers' report, any questions from Mr. Muirhead?
No, thank you.
And any questions from Ms. Strong?
No, thank you.
Or Mr. Penny?
No, I'm happy. Thank you.
Just on points of fact, and I must admit our officers are always very thorough, although we little bitch there of not getting those environmental agreements. But thank you very much, Mrs. Rogers. We are so content now. So moving on then, this is now an opportunity for the applicant to put forward their application. Will it be you, Mr. Muirhead, speaking, or will Ms. Strong also wish to contribute?
I think it's just going to be myself. Thank you. We've prepared a statement that represents both of our views.
Thank you very much indeed. When you're ready then, thank you.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the opportunity to present our application, and of course to residents for sharing their concerns. As you mentioned, I'll be careful not to repeat anything that's in the application, but perhaps provide a little more clarity. I think most are aware that the premises are situated in a mixed residential and commercial area. So I do appreciate that any change, no matter how small, is going to be received with some natural caution from those around us. We have considered the points raised in the 3 representations, and as Sarah mentioned, we've provided a written response to each of those, which I hope was useful to residents in making clear how our changes would be managed and impact on those around us. I think it's reasonable to conclude from the representations that there are 2 main issues. Public nuisance generated from music and public nuisance from customers. I think it's perhaps important to be clear on what our business is intended to do, as I believe there might be some confusion around what we're actually about. We're not a nightclub, we're not a live music venue, we are a restaurant with a cocktail offer, and looking at the hours that we will be operating, we suspect around 75% of our service will be food-led and about 25% will be cocktail-led, albeit that 25% is likely to be on a Friday and Saturday night where we are seeking that later licence. During the day, we're going to be offering things like bottomless brunches, afternoon teas, and in the evening we'll be focused on street food. And alongside that, we will introduce a cocktail menu that's designed to pair with that food. So we talk about Mexican food with tequila-based cocktails. Although I think it is clear, to be honest and transparent, that we're not expecting everybody that comes in to want to have food. The premises is small. Our capacity is going to be around 20 on the ground floor and 30 on the first floor. So that's 50 in total, we think. And the sound system that's installed there will be the same as that which was used by the previous occupants. So we're not putting any big sound systems, DJ, etc. As part of the consultation process, we had useful discussions with Dorset Fire, Dorset Police and Environmental Health. We have agreed quite a lot of new conditions that will reinforce our commitment to promote the licensing objectives. Very focused, we have agreed to add an inaudibility clause, which you heard a minute ago, where any music will not be audible from outside the premises. And I think by enforcing such a condition, that will mitigate any concerns at all around the music noise that's coming out. And in terms of managing people, public nuisance and disorder, we have agreed a number of conditions which include the use of SIA door super. When you consider these new proposed conditions and our small capacity, I think our proposed variation should be supported. I think Christchurch has got a really strong day trade and it's got quite a vibrant nighttime economy. And I hope our efforts to cater to both audiences will be well received by the community, and that there's recognition that a well-managed venue can actually have a positive impact on public nuisance and disorder, not a negative one. That's it from me. Of course, we're happy to take any questions and listen to any further concerns raised by the residents or committee. And of course, we're prepared to make further adjustments where practical. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muirhead. Thank you. So with that presentation, members, any questions for Mr. Muirhead? Councillor Farr?
Yes, just a quick question. How many members of staff would there be on the premises at any one time? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farr.
Thank you. I think we are expecting to have at least 4 on site at any one time. That's 2 in the kitchen and 2 front of house. That is going to only increase at the weekends where we're expecting life to be a lot busier, and that could be anywhere between 6 and 8 members of staff.
And what would that split be between kitchen and front of house?
I think it's pretty much always going to be an equal split. The more customers we have, the more resources are going to be needed to serve those customers their food.
Very much. If you can't cook it, you can't serve it quite. Yes, thank you, Mr. Muirhead. Are there any questions from you, Councillor Johnson, at this moment?
Yes, just a couple of quick ones on procedure, basically. So with regards to these conditions that have been agreed with environmental health regarding keeping people outside in check, would that be something you'd entrust to the SIA staff that would be there at the time, or would that be something that you do yourself with your own staff? Because obviously if you went with SIA through an agency, you'd have to obviously explain it quite a few times. But if you could just clarify that for me, I'd be grateful. Thank you,
Councillor Johnson. Mr. Muirhead?
Of course, thank you. I think during the week when there are no SIA, we'll be wholly responsible for ensuring that order is maintained. With SIA, we have a number of premises already and we employ our own SIA staff. So we have a good relationship and a very stable group of SIA. So I wouldn't expect there to be a constant shift in the number of and the variety of SIA that we have on board.
Thank you very much. A further question, Councillor Johnson?
No, that's answered it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All my questions have been shot down with regard to the environmental conditions which have been placed. They've all stemmed around that, as I'm sure the other members' questions did too. So I have nothing further to raise. But we now have an opportunity to ask our objector, Mr. Penny. Do you have any questions, please, for Mr. Muirhead? Thank you.
Quite a few of my questions have been answered by the conditions which have been put on for health and environment and health, which I'm happy about, and has allayed some of my concerns. There are 2 major concerns that I have, and that is with experience. I've been in Church Street for 21 years now, and parking down Church Street is double yellow lines, and no stopping. The problem late at night, we have some people who decide to break that law and park up on the double yellow lines, which stops access to the premises, especially in an emergency. And also when people leave the premises, you have taxi drivers outside with their cars running on a number of occasions, and people who leave those premises are not very quiet and does disturb the sleeping pattern of people within the cottages. and of slamming doors. That's my biggest concern at the moment, with the late night openings of your premises. We suffer that from the late night openings of Splinters, where I have complained on many occasions.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to, it's a difficult one, this, Mr. Penny, because parking is a concern for us, but it's not something which is within our jurisdiction because it's enforced obviously by transportation. Obviously, any taxi driver who acts in breach of his license would obviously be required to, we would be required to deal with that. So taxi drivers parking on yellow lines and clients perhaps parking on yellow lines is a difficulty, but it's not something which we would oversee per se. But I'm going to ask, if I may, Mrs. Cole, could you further comment on this, please?
Of course, Chair. Well, as the Chair has rightly said, it's not a matter of consideration for the licensing committee, but certainly it may be a consideration for another department in the council. And if there are particular issues with parking, then they can be raised, but unfortunately it's not something of consideration for the licensing committee today. Again, if there are particular taxi drivers, that is a matter for a licensing team, and if there is persistent parking on double yellow lines, you know, they'd welcome, licensing team would be welcome for that to be brought to their attention. A reminder could be sent to operators to advise their drivers that they shouldn't be waiting on double yellow lines outside the premises. And it may be that customers would have to leave Splinters and walk a little bit further to a place to get into a taxi, where the taxi's legally allowed to pull in and park.
Thank you. I didn't want Mr. Penny thinking that although this is a great concern, and we totally understand, Mr. Penny, it's a great concern in these areas where
may I just make one comment?
No, Penny, then
yeah,
you can make it.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that this is totally without not within our jurisdiction, so we cannot take it into consideration. But to say that if we were so disposed to grant, and it did occur, there is a solution to you to make a direct representation to the licensing team with regard to any taxi driver, or direct representation to our transportation service with regard to anybody who's parking on double yellow lines who is not a taxi driver. So there is some redress for you, but unfortunately it's not through this licensing body, okay, this particular committee.
So can you remind me who that part of the council is I've got to go to if there's a problem?
I'm sure we can do that after the meeting, Mr. Penny.
Thank
okay,
you.
I'm sure we can help you out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions that you'd like to put, Mr. Penny, at this moment? You'll have your opportunity, obviously, to speak. No? Mr. Penny?
No, sorry, that was the main thing, which you have my letter of my objections, and quite a few of those answers have been answered. So
thank you. Bless you. So I'll ask then if Mrs. Rogers has any questions for our applicant.
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. So we will now go on to our other persons to put forward your submission. You are our other person, Mr. Penny. Okay, that's what the definition I have. You're another person. And if you'd like to put forward your submission when you are ready, and then we can raise those questions. Thank you, Mr. Penny.
I've got nothing further to add to what I was saying in my letter or anything else, so I don't want to waste the time.
Thank you. And clearly, you've already stated that a lot of your concerns have been mitigated.
Yeah.
We're extremely grateful to you for not wasting the committee's time. It's extremely kind of you. Just to make sure that everything that you wanted to raise has been put forward. Okay, so with that said, then I will have to raise it because it's part of the process. Are there any questions for Mr. Penny from Mr. Muirhead, or from members, or from Mrs. Rogers? Members, do you have any questions for Mr. Penny? Councillor Johnson?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Farr?
No, thank you.
Yeah. And are there any questions, Mr. Muirhead, you'd like to raise for Mr. Penny?
It's working so.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. We've been very kind to you, Mr. Penny. And Mrs. Rogers, do you have any questions for Mr. Penny?
No, I don't. Thank you.
I'm trying to ask it to pro quo. So, Mr. Penny, there's nothing there because you've been quite clear, although you didn't speak for long, you've been quite clear in what you had to advise us. Thank you very much. So we will move on then to the final point, which is where all parties have the opportunity to sum up, and the party who spoke last to go first. So, Mr. Penny, this is your opportunity now to give us your thoughts based on all the conditions which we've been able to put forward from the police and from the environment, and those also proffered by the applicant. So you have your opportunity now, Mr. Penny. Thank you. To be honest, the information received from the health environment, as I've already said, I'm happy with, and it's just the very late hour which I'm concerned on, and I will always be concerned on the late hour of people leaving the premises, and the disturbance it gives to my children who sleep out by the premises, and that's all. But if Mr. Muirhead can actually keep the people when they leave quiet as they leave, that will do some way of helping us out. Very much based on quiet dispersal. Thank you very much, Mr. Penny. Mr. Muirhead, your opportunity to sum up.
Thank you. I only had one further point to make, recognising that the taxi rank, etc., outside of our jurisdiction.
Somebody's got a television on. Can they pop the television or the radio off so we can hear? Thank you. Whoever that was, very naughty, but you're forgiven. Mr. Muirhead, if you'd like to start again, thank you.
Thank you. It was just one further point just around the management of people. Obviously, taxis are outside of our control, and so are other venues. But we do have a commitment, particularly through the conditions that are being placed on us, to ensure a smooth and quiet dispersal. And despite our small capacity, we will still be encouraging all of our customers to head down towards the taxi rank, which is probably 40 metres away from the venue. And we'll be discouraging any sort of pickups from that end of Church Street, which is very narrow as it is. So we will be encouraging everybody turn right, head towards the High Street, where they can find their onward passage. That's it from us.
Thank you for that assurance, Mr. Muirhead. And Mrs. Rogers, did you have any questions for Mr. Penny? No, it's not questions, is it? It's, do you have anything in summary? I'm sure you don't, but just asking.
I had a response from Mrs. Mackey from when I showed her the conditions agreed with environmental health.
Yes.
And she did state in her response that if the licence was limited to 11 p.m, she would withdraw her representation, but not under any other circumstance. She was still concerned.
But the members haven't been privy to that information, Mrs. Rogers. When did that come?
I'm just desperately looking for it now. That came in yesterday afternoon. I will find it.
We've been having a few technical issues, so we'll try and overcome that one after the meeting. We'll have a chat and see if we can't write that. But you've shared that with us now. Thank you very much, Mrs. Rogers. That's very helpful.
Okay.
So if everybody has had the opportunity to raise questions and say, give their contributions to today, I will now conclude the hearing. At the end of this meeting, the subcommittee will adjourn in private with the legal advisor and the clerk to deliberate. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be provided within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, and that's today's date. And the notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. And I'll ask our legal advisor, Mrs. Cole, if she'd kindly explain the right of appeal to us, please. Thank you, Mrs. Cole.
Thank you, Chair. There will be to any decision that's made today by the subcommittee. That appeal should be made to Dorset Magistrates Court within 21 days of written confirmation of today's decision.
Thank you very much indeed. So everybody, Mr. Penny, Mr. Muirhead and Chantel, I can't remember your surnames. I'm going to call you Chantel, please forgive me. But thank you for attending to this morning, and we will get that decision out to you as soon as possible. Thank you very much. And I would ask you now, Mrs. Cutler, who is leaving? Are we leaving and going to another room, or are we asking our guests to leave?
I think if everyone signs off, and I'll send out another meeting invitation in about 5 minutes' time for us to do the deliberations. Okay.
Thank you very much, everybody. And good afternoon to you. Thank you. Goodbye.